What's going on, everybody? Welcome, Broncos country. Here again with you. We've got Mr. Coach Cobb and Braden. Myself, I'm Vince Cressman. Welcome, everybody, to the Broncos Zone podcast, part of the Elevated Pulse Sports family of podcasts by the fans, for the fans, diehards only. Gentlemen, how is your week going to this point?
Pretty good.
Having a great week. It's fires, man. I'll tell you what, Colorado, we need some rain. We need some rain to get a little help here to Colorado. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, next week's going to be insane. There's potentially anywhere from 3 to 5 days next week that could be above 100. So, yeah, we need some moisture. We need some heat relief. Those fires are always an issue. But yeah, with the drought this year in particular, it's worrisome. But hope everyone's staying safe out there.
Get it out of the way before training camp starts.
Right. Well, glad to be here with you all tonight. Of course, we like to start our week off with a nice bit of trivia, and we got Coach Cobb up again with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We got one as we get ready to go in training camp. Had the opportunity to see this guy when he was with us. So we're going to start off with the fact that we're going to go wide receiver. He played for 4 teams and one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Ended his career with the Broncos. Finished wearing the number 19. And that's
I think I know who it is.
I think I kind of went easy on you guys that one. So
yeah. I think Vince. I think I know who it is too. You go ahead and answer it.
Let's have some fun without saying the name. Let's see if we can throw random trivia out there about him. Does he have a Super Bowl MVP to his name?
Does. Also owns Super Bowl.
The Broncos.
Yes, which is a really sad part to it. Actually has the Super Bowl record for most receiving yards in a single Super Bowl, which I think was also against the Broncos. Played for 2 AFC West teams. And then, finished... as much as I'd say, finished it with the Broncos.
Went to a Super Bowl with the other AFC West team.
It did. That is a true statement. Also went to multiple, and only one that he lost, as a matter of fact. So it was kind of a black mark on his record, to say the least. So
that's a good bit of trivia. I don't think I.
Well, maybe the refs were the cause of that loss.
Could have been, that could have been a little bit. Too.
Maybe a little controversial.
That is true. And swapping coaches, certainly that worked out pretty well too. So
yeah.
But yeah, it was just one. Like I said, it was one that I was thinking of from the standpoint of I got to see his last training camp practice. Funny as it is, that was probably my closest touch with greatness, as he ran literally trying to get the ball in and out, went right over the top of us as we're sitting out there on the old berm before they got rid of that. But kind of one of those hard to see. We talk about guys when, and I'm sure we'll talk about this, we get on through the rest of the season. Obviously, I go out and throw out as Jerry Rice for those out there watching. It was a tough one. You sit there and think about it. These guys that are coming to training camp. I was actually doing a little bit of reading on some of the guys that we've had. We had a big group of guys that were the heart and soul of the Denver Broncos back in the 70s and 80s, going to all the Super Bowls. And we had a ton of guys going into training camp that decided it was time to hang it up. And it was unfortunate to see. We had a guy like Tom Jackson, who just played all-time linebacker great. Finally, and the tough part was here was Tom playing in that Super Bowl, and then the Broncos end up with the Super Bowl again. I think a lot of those guys were looking at the possibility that they were going to go into, which we did, end up going to replacement games and things like that. But looking at these greats like Reuben Carter, Barney Chavis, Tom Jackson, Steve Foley, all these guys, a number of guys that are in the Ring of Fame, and knew that the time was there. And then you had a guy like Jerry Rice, who's all great, everything, and it was a shame to see that situation. Of course, it was a shame to see that happen with us. Seems like we get a few of those greats that come in here. One that I know, and I was going to throw this into that particular trivia question and kind of decided not to go with it too. Andre Reed, who ended up, after he's done with the Bulls, ended up coming here, and again, situation that little too late for us, but thinking about those things as we go into training camp and looking at what players decide it's time and they're going to move on. I think we're pretty lucky in the fact that we got a young team, so I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of that unless we just see guys that you have those guys, it seems like every year, that decide to you see them all the time, 27, 28, can't do it anymore, body won't physically do it, or just make that decision to not end up in poor health down the road. So, but that was kind of my one for tonight. I was talking about the good old Jerry Rice and the short time that we got. Such a for Manning it worked out. For Jerry, not much left in the tank when it came down. So
a little hard to play wide receiver when you're in your 40s.
Yeah, sure.
For sure.
The production he had in Oakland, though, even when he was up there, was insane. He still put up some numbers. I got curious and I looked it up. He was drafted 16th overall in the 85 draft, and only 2 Hall of Famers were selected above him, in Bruce Smith, who was number 1 overall, and Chris Dolman by Minnesota, the defensive end. So, I mean, it's, a decent amount of teams passed on arguably the greatest wide receiver of all time. I think he's the greatest wide receiver in terms of production, maybe not in terms of physical specimen or just overall talent, because I would put Randy Moss or Megatron up there for that conversation. But in terms of his numbers and his consistency, he was a machine.
Yep. No doubt about it.
Especially in an era where you're not passing the ball 40 times a game on a regular basis.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And I mean, in a West Coast offense too, that wasn't necessarily designed to go over the top. It was a lot of yards after the catch for him. So he was an athlete for sure.
That was the one that was crazy, to sit there and see a guy turn a 7-yard pass into a 70-yard touchdown, and leaving guys. And I don't think Jerry would ever tell you he was the fastest guy. 40, I think, was, probably 4 or 5, something like that. But, you got even Terrell Davis, go back and look at that. I don't think Terrell's numbers were all that great in his 40 and such, but, you turn around and put somebody behind him that wanted that ball. He had a whole nother gear when he popped in and had to go score. So pretty impressive what, again, maybe that's what they should do. I think I suggest that going forward, the NFL should have one guy that's trying to take their job, put them behind them, and see how fast they run a 40 and get the true time of a athlete at that point. See how they do. So,
well, let's go ahead and transition over to news. Thanks to Coach Cobb for that awesome trivia question and bringing up one of the greats in Jerry Rice. So it's a little bit of a slow news week in the NFL, but we do have training camp dates that are officially set. Starting on July 31st through Wednesday, August 19th. It happens nearly daily, and all of them here in Denver are going to be at 10 a.m. Gentlemen, did you all get any of those select tickets? Only 1,000 1,000 tickets per practice. Did you all get any last week?
Yep. I am slated for, you know, uh August 8th. I got those tickets. So if anybody else got tickets for that date, you'll see me there. So
I
Nice.
I sadly was aced out by the time I realized it. I'll tell you, Brayden, I'm not sure what time you're on, but I got on. I got into something else I was working on. I was on there probably 10:25, and they were pretty much gone.
oh
So
yeah.
to sit
Oh,
there and think
you,
about those 1,000
mhm.
tickets for each of those, boy, I'll tell you what, they were gone.
Yep.
They were
I was
gone,
they
guaranteed. So
they have like a room where you kind of enter into like 10 minutes the before the tickets actually go
mhm.
on sale. So I was lucky enough to only have maybe like 150 people in front of me.
Yeah,
Oh,
those
that's cool.
online releases or
Nice.
drops or ticket waiting rooms, those could get well, there's a lot of words I could use, but I'll just say treacherous.
Yeah.
Some shenanigans could happen in there, but hopefully, I mean, for a free event, I mean, hopefully it wasn't too bad. And speaking of the 1,000 tickets, it of course is because of all the construction, the new improvements being put on to the training facility, and so they had to severely limit it. In the past, you both have mentioned in previous episodes that you all have attended in the fairly recent past. What has been the population for fans out there in the past? You all remember?
I mean, last week was pretty small too because the construction was still going on, and there's a lot of construction last year. So you basically had like three sections of stands over on the far what would in the past have been the far side of the practice fields. So um, it was very small. The years before, you're just sitting on the grass, tons of people.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I think last year was probably maybe like 1,000. It was probably similar, 1,000 maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a bummer to see this, and I'm really hoping that it returns to where it was. Although I know the fire department out there has come in and limited the number of people even that could sit on the berm. They kind of did some stuff there right, I think it was right before COVID, and then seeing where they're at and deciding to reduce it. It's kind of a bummer in some sense when they went to ticketing system. I used to take my kids out there that I work with in the summers. Because a lot of times that was the only time they would ever be able to see a professional team. At least with the Broncos, it's, buying tickets, hard to get tickets, things like that. And so it's a really great opportunity for them. And so it's been kind of a drag to see them reduce that so much and take away those opportunities. It was great. I can tell you when going all the way back to UNC, when they used to start doing back in like the late 80s, they would bring teams in as they still do, although I understand they're not doing that. They're not bringing in a team this year for combined practices, but they had the Arizona Cardinals. They were still Phoenix Cardinals, brought them up to UNC, and they had on the huge hill that they had up there by the dorms. Excuse me, they had approximately 58,000 fans that watched an inter-squad scrimmage between those guys. Had the refs hitting, kicking, calling names, the whole ball of wax, and you felt like you were right there. It was a cool experience to see that. And then, like I said, I alluded to having the opportunity to sit there on the berm, like Braden mentioned, and seeing seeing Jerry Rice. Those ropes, they drop them pretty fast, and those guys are coming out of bounds, and almost got run over by Jerry Rice. So that was pretty crazy. It's missed a little bit of that. I totally get it with construction. I know they've talked about replacing the berm. I hope that's something they do, and it would be nice for them to be able to somehow figure out a way to expand that to more fans. And again, for some, that's the only chance they get to see those guys. And for a lot of kids, as they've done, to go up and and get those autographs and meet some of their heroes out there. So
My favorite training camp memory is when I was a kid. Um, I was able to get like nestled into one of the corners on the rope line after the practice. I was able to get Neil Smith, Rod Smith, and I want to say Montanabasa's autograph. I was most excited about Neil Smith, and he was probably the least excited of the three to give an autograph, but he still did it. He was not a people pleaser by any means, but I loved him on the team, and a little bit of that arrogance on the defensive line going after the quarterback isn't a bad thing, and we definitely had that in Neil Smith. But yeah, training camp has changed a lot over the years, and I every once in a while I hear stories from old NFL players, the collective bargaining agreements and the amount of practices that are allowed to happen in the off season and what they look like has changed a lot over the years. But yeah, there's some
yeah,
stories where it was not glamorous, and you think of a college dorm, glamorous is not what comes to mind for NFL teams. So it's
yeah.
it's interesting to think about the differences now.
Yeah, there's something you mentioned CBA. That's the toughest part, I think, too. And again, I'm sure from a player standpoint and saving their bodies, things like that. Obviously, they got their extra game that they were looking for, and one less preseason game, stuff like that. But I do remember even with even think of the days Von Miller when we first drafted him, we were still in 2 days. We do a practice at 8 o'clock. There'd be practice at 8 o'clock in the morning, go till about 10:30, 11 o'clock. They'd get out, shower, meetings, all that stuff, and then they'd be back out there at 2 o'clock. And that was, again, as somebody, grew up through 2 days, things like that. To me, that was it. And then to come down and all the CBA, and now it's one practice a day. Yeah, it's a different feel. We're still seeing the good football. We're still seeing the good things that are there, but it's definitely training camp is a little bit different feel than it used to be for sure.
Braden, when you were in high school and you played, did you have two-a-days at all during the summer?
Oh, yeah.
100%.
That was pretty bad. That being said, I played quarterback, so I had it a lot easier than a lot of people, so hated to be, and I played in Texas, so I would have hated to be the running back group or the wide receiver group having to run all that. Now, 5-step drop, hand off the ball to the running back. I had it so easy.
When I was in high school, between our freshman and sophomore year, they put in a turf field, and while we were excited about that to not be playing on largely dirt, it also made the two-a-days in the summer excruciating because that field was about 10 degrees hotter. But just I chuckled when you were telling that story, Braden, because my first practice in high school, they're like, all right, if you're a specialty player, come over here. If not, go on the other side, and we're going to be doing some conditioning drills. And I had not wanted to volunteer as a specialty player, but when I heard long snappers qualified, I was like, hey, I can long snap. I'll come be a long snapper, so I don't have to do the extra conditioning. Uh, but yeah, the the things the things people will do to maybe get a little break. Anyways, I'm sure we can have lots of fun telling stories like that. But let's keep going with the Broncos. And so we've talked about this a fair amount on the pod already, but Davis Webb taking over the play calling duties has become, a talking point across the NFL. I remember The Athletic a couple weeks ago had a whole article about first time play callers, and they sort of profiled the journeys of each of them. And Davis Webb was obviously one of them. And so I want to ask you all tonight. So is Payne give you up the play calling a good thing in your mind? It's sort of a simple or straightforward question. Yes or no? Are you pro Sean Payne having given up the play calling, or do you have reservations about it?
I don't think I have reservations about it. I think it'll be slightly more aggressive, but I don't see a whole lot of difference in scheme. Just in general, I think we'll be, especially with the addition of Jalen Waddle, I think we'll definitely be a more down the field team on a more consistent basis. I know we passed down the field. The kind of consensus that Bo Nix is only throwing screen passes, or it. You look at his stats and his yards per attempt are even or slightly more than Caleb Williams, who is thought of as a down the field magical passer. And it's the same. It's very, very close. But I do think there will be a more vertical passing attack with the addition of Waddle. And I think Davis Webb, I think he had some play calling duties or opportunities last year. And I think we definitely saw a little more aggressive play calling.
Yeah, I would. In the back of my mind, I agree with you. I think that Davis Webb, here's a guy that was getting some opportunities. He was getting some lookouts, decided to stick around with the Broncos. I don't know if that says that. Hard to say. I don't know that most guys that are in coaching profession, in the NFL, will sit there and not want to have their own piece to things, start to build things, start to build his resume. Maybe opportunities didn't look right for him at the time for what he was getting offered. And now it's a matter of, do you have the opportunity to go out and set that? Are you going to do that now? Or is it going to be something where Sean is going to be like, okay, buddy, here's a little rope, but also understanding that if for some reason at some point in time the Davis Webb experiment doesn't work, that Sean doesn't have to take it back over and completely rework his system back into it. So I think is it going to be a hybrid of both? Is it going to be just Coach Webb taking it over? Or, like I said, I don't know. I don't know what Peyton does with that I think any head coach still keeps his finger a little closer to the pulse in case something happened. Davis just, for whatever reason, can't get it done. But I think he has a lot of. I think Sean, by agreeing to do that, and knowing that he has a new contract, knowing he's going to be here, Davis is really. I think Coach Webb's got to be in there and he's got to prove himself. And so I'll be curious to see how far we go with that. If it's a drastic change with Bo, fantastic, let him roll. And if it's not, then Sean's going to be sitting there waiting to pull the reins back on that pretty quick, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, if we're having, sorry, I was just saying, if we have some early struggles, I think it'll be, they'll let it play out. But if it lasts a little longer, similar to how the Eagles or the Lions in past years have struggled on offense, I think Sean will, take that back. But I really don't see. My best guess is it's still the Sean Payton playbook, and Davis Webb is just calling the plays. That's you don't want to trick it up too much on Bo. I wouldn't think.
Sure.
So I guess my follow-up question would be sort of why now? Is this more about empowering Knicks and Davis Webb too? Or is it meant to be a Knicks friendly move, or is it more about Peyton taking on more of like a 30,000 foot role and not being as specific hands-on with just the offense, or maybe both? What do you all think?
I would say it was more about not losing Davis Webb than anything else. Because I think he's too valuable of a coach to let go to any other team. And I think the ability for him to call plays on this team led him to staying on this team. I think if someone else, another team, were to say, hey, you've got full control of the playbook and you can call plays and do whatever, I think you would have gone there. But you have the culture of the Broncos. Sean Payton's willing to give up play calling for that. And if if you just call plays really well and you're really successful with this team, especially with, how Bo Nix is viewed by a bunch of people in the NFL, if he goes off for 4,000 yards and, 35 touchdowns, Davis Webb, he's going to get a head coaching job. So I don't see how this wouldn't be super attractive for the Broncos and for Davis Webb. So
What about you, Jim?
Yeah, I sit there and look at, again, I go back to, always taking that little shot back in history, thinking about Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves being controlling underneath Tom Landry, doing all the things he did. Of course, Tom Landry built his tree with Ditka and with Reeves and all those guys and got that out there. Then Reeves goes in a couple years, at least what 3 years, and then he found some little hotshot wide receiver coach named Mike Shanahan, and look at what was going on with that. Honestly, the stories have been around that I think if it wasn't for Shanahan, I don't know what Reeves and Elway would have done to each other. We've seen blowups a little bit on the sideline, not to make a big deal out of it. I think it's competition with Nix and Sean, at each other a little bit. I don't get this. I want to do this. Let me do this. Maybe Davis Webb is that Mike Shanahan guy. And to what you said, Braden, it could end up being a situation, although it was a total joke that Al Davis was ever going to give up total reign of the Raiders, no matter if they're in Oakland, LA, Las Vegas, wherever. Shanahan was hoping he was going to do that. And, that situation turned out pretty poor. But to sit there and even come back and look at when Shanahan was given a chance by Pat Bowlen again to come back and coach, Shanahan wanted to take that one more year and stick it out with the 49ers. Obviously, he saw what he had coming. But the thing of it was is he learned the 49er way. Maybe this is what Davis Webb is getting ready to do with Sean, is figuring out now that Sean has turned this around, made us relevant again in the AFC West and beyond. Maybe this is Davis Webb's opportunity to sit there and say, okay, now I see it. This is how we build a starter. And maybe he's that next guy getting ready, like you said, Vince, about and Braden about talking about, where's the next opportunity for him down the road that Sean finally gets to branch his tree out a little bit farther than it has in some cases.
Yeah, I think you both made some interesting points, but I hope we're not in a situation, you both touched on it, where it's excuse me, at all a conversation that Peyton might need to take back over the offense. Let's hope that, Bo's healthy enough to where there will be no hindrance there, and that Webb is ready for this responsibility and has this offense humming. And speaking of trying to get the offense to take the next step, CBS ranked Jalen Waddle and Cortland Sutton as the number 6 receiver duo in the NFL. The article talks about Waddle's speed and yards after catch ability, and Sutton as an receiver skill set as a potentially perfect contributor for combination for Bo Nix. We know the chemistry between Sutton and Nix. It's been there since game 1 against Seattle of Bo's rookie year. And by all accounts, Waddle and Nix are gelling nicely. My question is sort of a two-parter to you all. Who has more pressure, given that the Broncos are rated the 6th best wide receiver duo, Waddle and Sutton are rated the 6th best wide receiver duo in the NFL? Who would you say has more pressure on them going into the season?
I mean, I would probably say Waddle, considering we traded for a first-round pick for him, and kind of he's quote unquote the piece we needed. He's the icing on the cake that'll push us over the hump and all that stuff. Where Sutton, I mean, I think he has Denver's trust already. I mean, we kind of know what he can and can't do, and he had some drops last year, but with a new wide receiver coach, maybe that get hopefully that gets mitigated. But I think it's Waddle, considering he's supposed to be that guy, and when you have that kind of title on you, pressure's going to build.
Sure. Yeah, looking at it, I was just looking up some stats here real quick. You had Cortland last year, 74 catches for 1,017 yards. And you had Jalen Waddle, who had 64 catches for 910 yards. They were only different by one touchdown. Would I say
Waddle
that
had a terrible quarterback situation last year?
for sure? Yeah, no, and that's the biggest part of it now. So now you're walking in. You've got two receivers who statistically, okay, even with one guy having a horrible quarterback situation, I agree with Braden. I think Waddle is the guy. You got to come in and prove that this is where it is, because again, statistically, you sit there and look at it, it's like, well, other than a few drops here and there, what's the difference between the two? Well, Waddle's got a lot of skill. He's got a lot of ability. He's got a lot of stuff going on. We said that about Evan Ingram last year. And that's where, is he the missing piece? Is he the part didn't come in? So I think we're all, we're excited about Waddle getting picked up and hoping it's not going to be another Evan Ingram, I think is where it's at. Yeah. And getting those guys who just went ahead and cleaned house and fine, do whatever you want. That's great. But, I think Waddle, I think he's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. I think there's a lot of fans that are putting a lot of pressure on his shoulders right now too. So,
all right. Well, as a barometer of your confidence in this wide receiver duo, I'm going to ask for a one-word response from each of you for the following question. Do you believe that both Cortland Sutton and Jalen Waddle can both reach the 1,000-yard mark this year?
Yes.
Braden, you go first. Yes. Oh. Jim, what about you?
No.
No? Interesting.
No. I think there's just too much spread out. I think that would be my answer with it real quick, because I think there's just too much spread out with the offense to get everybody the ball and get it where it is. I don't think both of them will hit 1,000. If it does, we're sitting looking good next February. I would say that.
Love it. Yeah, that'll be interesting. We'll have to come back and revisit that question. But I love it if Braden were right and that both
absolutely
cracked 1,000.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go ahead. And we were mentioning the heat here in Denver. It has been ridiculously hot and it's only going to get hotter. But this segment is going to be titled the AFC West Heat Check. We're going to talk about a few different topics with an overall lens, specifically focused on the AFC West, excuse me. So, gentlemen, which team in the AFC West, in each of your opinions, has the best quarterback situation as we sit here today before training camp going to the 2026-2027 season?
I mean, is it really that hard? We got Kirk Cousins, who's pushing, mid to late 30s with a rookie quarterback behind him. We've got Patrick Mahomes coming off of an ACL injury with middling quarterback talent behind him, even with, very athletic Justin Fields. And we've got what if Justin Herbert, playoff Herbert. It's, he's efficient in the regular season, but when it matters, he fails. I obviously a lot of bias, but if Bo Nix's ankle is completely healthy, and it seems that it is, and he's practicing and he's running on it, and it's good as new, I don't see why he's not the not the most talented, maybe not the best, but currently, with that offensive line and the talent around him, why that's not the best situation.
The best quarterback situation. Okay. What about you, Coach Cobb?
Again, sure, call me a homer. I think Bo's got it. I think Bo's got all the pieces that are there. I don't see him. If you're going to talk statistically, there's a argument for Herbert in regards to that, but I think Moxie, I think the whole package, I think it's got to be Bo all the way. I'm not. I know Patrick Mahomes would be the one that a lot of people would roll to. I know there's some of the receivers that are finally coming back, and Rashid Rice, Xavier Worthy, some of those. But at the end of the day, I think he's going to continue to go to Kelsey. And Kelsey has got a lot of other things on his mind right now. And he only signed that 1 year deal. And I think at some point in time, I don't think, even with Walker, I don't think that's going to serve him well. Kansas City's always had a decent running back. One way or another, they've gotten, even if it's been a 1 year, 1 year guy or whatever the case may be, they've always had a good running game. And I think maybe they have it again this year. I think their offensive line is young. I have to go with Bo. At the end of the day, I don't see enough that the Chargers have done well. Like you said, Braden, Cousins, if you had Cousins 7 years ago, that might be a different story. I don't think Cousins has got it. And we'll see if Mendez, right?
Mendoza.
Is that the quarterback? Or Mendoza, yeah. I don't, if they come out of training camp and he's starter day one, it's kind of like sitting there watching Cam Ward all over again. Cam Ward's got a ton of talent, but the NFL is a different speed altogether. So realistically, I don't see any reason why the Broncos aren't repeating next year.
Yeah. And for the record, I love Mendoza. I absolutely hate that I have to root against him. But if it wasn't for Mahomes' ACL injury last year being so late into the season, I'd probably say Mahomes. It's just they're probably having to ease him back, and he's not going to be able to, scramble drill. It's not going to be in the cards for him, most likely in September. So that's where I see Bo Nix, as long as his mobility hasn't been altered by the ankle injury, which it was just a fracture. It's not like it was the Dak Prescott injury from a few years ago where it just was nasty to look at.
Oh.
As long as Bo Nix stays healthy and he's still mobile and he's still able to make those, those out of the pocket throws, like the one you saw against the Colts last year in the second game of the season, or even the one against the Packers where it just kind of went in between the two defenders. As long as he can pull those off, it just seems to me that, it's all gas at this point.
Yeah. So I appreciate everything you both said. I mean, we are the Broncos Zone podcast. Yeah. We are elevated pulse sports for the fans, by the fans, diehards only. I would expect us to be confident in the Broncos quarterback situation since we finally found a quarterback that we believe in Bo Nix. However, I am not sold that we are in the best quarterback situation. I'm not saying we're in a bad quarterback situation, but I think one thing that both of you touched on has me a little bit worried. We do not know just what Bo will look like. That's not a knock on Bo. I don't blame him for his injury. We just simply don't know what his mobility is. And when I think of Bo Nix, I think of his playmaking ability outside of the pocket on the run. I think that is where he is at his best. So I want us to have the best quarterback situation. I am not confident that we have the best quarterback situation. And for that same reason, Patrick Mahomes, 3 Super Bowls out of 5 appearances, I think, he's great for a reason. People obsess over him for a reason. And I cannot stand the Chiefs, but they have a similar worry, right? As great as Patrick Mahomes is, we don't know what his mobility is. That's a similar issue. While Kirk Cousins, yes, he is up there and his time in Atlanta was weird, he can still play. He is I would rather have him than Jacoby Brissett. And I'm not trying to slight Jacoby Brissett, but I would rather have the Raiders situation than the Cardinals situation. and they do have Mendoza. And so for the first time in a while, it seems like the Raiders have a plan for something. And so that's not, I don't, I think the AFC West as a division is in a good place. And even the worst team with the worst quarterback situation, I think is decent in the Raiders. I haven't talked about the Chargers, and simply because Herbert is productive and he's not dealing with an injury like Knicks and Patrick Mahomes, I am going to say it's the Chargers, but only because of the injuries to Knicks and Mahomes. So I don't know. I
Yeah,
it's hard to say.
the
And
one,
I mean, how do you want to define it? It's subjective, but go ahead, Jim.
sure. No, I was just going to say the one, to sit there and look at injuries and such. You had, if I look at Kirk Cousins, if I remember right, it was the Achilles. If we're looking at Patrick Mahomes, it's an ACL, and with Knicks, it's a broken ankle. If I had to go through, knowing what I've done, what I've dealt with soft tissue type injuries, I would take a broken bone over soft tissue any day of the week. You just don't know how that soft tissue is going to hold up. And there could be other things that you'll never know about it. At least a break, you go in, you look at it. I think that the cleanup surgery was to get rid of some scar tissue that's going through there. You look at a guy, again, go back to Elway. The guy played his entire high school career, college career, well, most of his high school career, his entire college career, and all 16 years with no ACL. He just never got it fixed. He just put a brace on it, let it go, didn't get in there, didn't try to mess with it, didn't do any of that stuff. And I think when you start messing with some of that stuff and you try to get it, you hope it's going to be stronger, but there's no guarantee on it. And, with a broken bone, again, I would rather fix the broken bone knowing you got a better chance to even put screws in it, things like that, than those soft tissue type injuries can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure. But really and truly, when you look at the division as a whole, well, I do not think. I think everybody's at least somewhat confident in the hands that they have at the quarterback position, whether that's long term, seemingly for both the Chiefs, the Broncos, and the Chargers. But it seems like the Raiders at least have a plan and a direction, which is something that we've not been able to say about them for a little while. But sticking with this theme of the AFC West, who, I'll ask it this way. If you were a player and you ended up on each of those four teams, which of these coaches in the division would you have the most confidence in?
Andy Reid. Yeah.
I think it's a
you win three Super Bowls and 5 appearances, like you said, and they've
6,
had to
right?
make it
with the Eagles one time.
Yeah, and went with the Eagles with Donovan McNabb and lost to the Patriots. But his play calling, man, it is insane, and he'll take it from anywhere. I heard he took a play from a janitor and used it in the game, and it worked. It's insane. You have the plays that Tyreek Hill suggested back when I think it was against the 49ers, and they even added it to Madden. It was a deep, like a deep out, like almost a 20-yard one or something like that, kind of like an out corner where and it somehow worked. And I think he's just really in tuned with the offense. And he kind of is a little bit of a walk around coach as well as calling the plays. As a quarterback, I would just love Andy Reid, where I think Sean Payton is a little more rigid with his play calls. I don't think he's always open to suggestion. I think Andy Reid's always looking to improve, get better, look at things from a different angle. and really listen to his quarterback. Not saying that Sean Payton doesn't listen to his quarterback. I just think Andy Reid's a little more open to it.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree on that. I think I could be certainly swayed awfully quick if the experiment that has been where so many people have thought about Drew Lock Drew Lock. Wow, that's going way back. Bo Nix, sorry, total flub there. Because I was really hoping for big things with Drew Lock and then never materialized. But with Bo Nix, I think realistically, there's been such a comparison to him and Drew Brees. And if you think about Drew Brees back when he started with the Chargers, didn't think he was going anywhere. Sean got in the quarterback, got him comfortable, got him slinging, and there are very few times that if you were playing fantasy football, you wouldn't take Drew Brees. I'm hoping that Sean's going to find that secret sauce and get him going. I agree with you, Braden. I would have to pick Andy Reid right off the bat just based on number of years of success with it. Harbaugh, he may be in that Pete Carroll, finally figured it out a little bit with the Seahawks, obviously, but it took him a while. He had to go spend some time in college before he brought it back. I think Harbaugh, when he played, was a great player. He obviously did some good things for Michigan. I just don't think he's there. I don't know if it's ever going to translate to what he wants it to be and turn the Chargers into a Super Bowl caliber team. So yeah, I agree. It would be Andy Reid. And hopefully this year, a year from now, we're saying that it's Sean Payton. It's Sean Payton's flip the script with Bo Nix on that.
Yeah, I agree. Any answer than Andy Reid, I'd be skeptical of. He's long been regarded as one of the best play callers in the NFL, and he's up there in age, and he's still. This is not the deepest offense in terms of pure weaponry that he's had, but they were not great last year, but he still finds a way to make it work with what he has. And I think that's a sign of a good coach, someone who can make it work with what he has rather than having to fit a square peg in a round hole. And I think he's done that for the majority of his career, and he's had a lot of success doing it. If we're talking about just one season, I think it would be Andy Reid. If I was looking to sort of, I'm using a lot of different metaphors here, but sort of hitch my wagon long term to somebody, I think my answer would be Kubiak, because you look at the success he's had in a short period of time. Yes, he's a first-time coach, but he's young. He knows how he wants to do things, and he's had a lot of success in a short period of time. And so, I think I'd be most excited if I were to get drafted by Kubiak. But if I'm just thinking 1 year at a time, it would be Andy Reid. I certainly would pick Sean Payton over Harbaugh, and Harbaugh is not a bad coach by any stretch of the imagination. But Payton's won a Super Bowl and Harbaugh hasn't. And while Harbaugh's 49ers teams were always sort of in contention, the same is true of Payton in New Orleans. And I would make an argument that's a much harder organization to win with in the New Orleans Saints than the San Francisco 49ers. And so in terms of a coach power rankings for right now, I think it would obviously be Reid. And then I would put Sean Payton followed by Harbaugh, and Kubiak. But I think Kubiak is one of the best first-year head coaches that we will see.
Yeah, so, I think Kubiak just has the very unfortunate, situation of being on the Las Vegas Raiders, and with that ownership. I do think Harbaugh is a player's coach. So I do see a lot of players, I would think a lot of players would really want to be coached by him, because he just seems like he's in it with you. He's on the trenches with you. But yeah, I think I agree with you. Hitching a wagon, I'd probably I don't know if I'd go Kubiak. I think he's brilliant. I think he's a brilliant head offensive coordinator, but I just want to see what he does first.
Well, and who real quick while I'm thinking about it, Harbaugh picked up Mike McDaniels this year as his OC, if
Yep.
I'm not mistaken. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to be. We sit here and we talk about Peyton and Davis Webb. What's that going to look like this year with John Harbaugh and Mike McDaniels? Who's going to call the offense? Is it still going to be Harbaugh? Is it still going to be the player's coach, or is it going to be the guy that, hey, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Mike McDaniels was hot stuff. He was hot in the NFL.
Yeah, he was the darling.
And, another Colorado kid, will sit there and certainly throw out as much as Kubiak and things like that. But, are they going to turn around? Are they going to fire that up with Harbaugh to turn around and have a new look this year? Or is it going to be more of the same with Harbaugh?
I can definitely see it being a more balanced attack. I know last year they had a lot of injuries on the running backs, so they had to pass more. But they were dealing with the Ravens' former offensive coordinator who loved the run. I forget his name, but I think with McDaniels and especially with Ladd McConkey, who had a down season last year, but we all know he's a very talented slot receiver. I think they're going to be intentional and more effective in that passing game, especially with healthy running backs. I definitely see Herbert pushing for an MVP caliber season.
Yeah, I could go on and on about this one in particular, but yeah, I'm interested to see McDaniel versus Vance Joseph in those Chargers matchups because I won't go into this right now, but like the trajectory of the Dolphins and the Broncos franchises went in complete opposite directions from the last time those two faced each other, with the absolute blowout that the Dolphins had against the Broncos early in Sean Payton's tenure, where what was it, like 70-21 or something like that. But I digress. We can revisit that another time, but that will be interesting. We were just talking about the addition of Mike McDaniel to the Chargers, but in terms of players, who is the biggest offseason addition in the AFC West? Now, you can only pick one for the whole division, but who do you think it is? Of course, we've got Jalen Waddle, we've got Kenneth Walker, Fernando Mendoza, Tyler Linderbaum. Who would you all put out there? David Njoku's on the list. If one of you picks David Njoku, I'm going to call the authorities for a mental wellness check. But who knows? Maybe Coach Cobb, as a former tight ends coach, is just really high on Njoku to the Chargers. But what do you all have?
Yeah, no, I certainly would not be going with any tight ends in the AFC West right now, including Travis Kelce right now, because I think that's never gone. Biggest free agent, I would have to.
Does it have to be a free agent? It could be one drafted too.
Oh, it could be a draft pick too. Man, I'll tell you what. It's for me. It's got to be Waddle. I know it's hometown cooking there. I just don't see. I don't see enough things that got me excited. I mean, I know Kenneth Walker will be talked about certainly, but I think Jalen Waddle for something to turn around and have a team that is just so absolutely close to making that. I think he's the biggest splash this year.
Yeah, in terms of impact, I would go Tyler Linderbaum. I think Waddle brings us from here to here. I think Tyler Linderbaum brings that Raiders offensive line from all the below the screen up to here. So I think it's a dramatic change in their offense, especially when you're controlling when you're pointing out players. Like the center has to be the smartest lineman on your offensive line. And he's an amazing center, especially when you have to protect a quarterback coming off of a torn Achilles and also a first round potential face of the franchise quarterback. So I would say Tyler Linderbaum in that regard.
Yeah, and I mean, sort of support your point, Braden. They also have huge draft capital in Ashton Genty from last year. So I mean, you look at the past 2 years, like you got to do something on the offensive line to get the best out of your highly coveted draft picks from the past 2 years. Just to play devil's advocate here, I I wasn't expecting anybody to say Linderbaum, but I think that's more than a valid argument. I definitely think Waddle is significant, especially with how much time we've spent talking on this podcast about the wide receiver room for the Broncos last year. But Kenneth Walker, my feeling is yes, the Chiefs have always had serviceable running backs. You look at Isaiah Pacheco, he, you know, he's a sort of streaky player. When he gets going, he could really rattle some big plays off. When you look at Kareem Hunt when he was in his prime before, his various well-known issues, also made some big plays and could gash you. I think Kenneth Walker is a more explosive player who is in a similar profile. And if, they've not been able to find the wide receiver weapons that they need since they've lost Tyreek Hill, the other option, I mean, Patrick Mahomes can't throw it to himself. And yes, you can force feed Travis Kelce, but as Coach Cub has pointed out multiple times, he's aging, and nothing against him other than the fact that he plays for the Chiefs and I can't stand them. But like they need other options, and a talented running back who has shown consistency and had his biggest game on the biggest stage. I don't think you just roll past that addition for an offense that has felt the way we've been feeling. We need something at wide receiver. I think the Chiefs would feel like they needed an upgrade at running back, and they got that in Kenneth Walker. So I do think that is one that, that one was highly covered. So it's not as if I am picking something that it's not by any means a hot take, but I think they're going to lean on Walker quite a bit, especially with the Mahomes recovery timeline being complicated.
Yeah.
Now, we're running out of time here, but I am interested to hear what you all would have to say. So, which AFC West team is most likely to disappoint, and which AFC West team is most likely to overachieve? What would you all say for this?
I think just from recent years, I think the AFC West team to most likely disappoint is probably the Chargers. I mean, there's a term, chargering. Big hype with McDaniels, but I just, unless you want to say it's the Broncos because a lot of people have them, potentially, oh, they could have gone to the Super Bowl last year if Bo Nix was healthy and stuff like that. So if you want to go like that, that's a very valid take. I just think with, history and the hype around McDaniels as the OC, and hey, we're back to being healthy. They're always back to being healthy. And then they're not. And then they miss the playoffs, or they're the best offense in the league. And then they still miss the playoffs. And then as far as overachieving, I mean, the Raiders, just because I don't think you could be as bad as you were last year. So,
right. Yeah, I would go with the Raiders as overachieving as well. I think that there's going to be a lot of things. I hate to compare Kubiak to McDaniels, but McDaniels, even when he came here, started off 6-0. I think Kubiak has an excellent chance of doing that because people don't know his offense, aren't used to the things he's going to do. Is he going to run stuff like his dad did? I don't think we know for sure. He's got some talent, got some things. There's possible surprise, if you will. Yeah, as far as the other side of it, yeah, the Chargers, I think they're going to have LA feeling great, but LA's going to be feeling great about the Rams, feeling great about the Chargers. And then I think the Chargers fall down at the end again.
Yeah, I agree. When the expectation for the Chiefs is largely Super Bowl or bust, when the Broncos got so close to the Super Bowl last year, and that's sort of the expectation, it's going to be hard for them to overachieve. When the Chargers keep saying, this is our year, this is our year that we take the next step, I think it's going to be hard for them to overachieve unless it's a really deep playoff run. So I think it has to be the Raiders. If I think if Mendoza and Genti show promise and they're not injured, and Kubiak shows, he's competent, which, not only do I believe he's confident, I believe he's a genius going to the revered institution of Colorado State University, go Rams, that he's going to have a great college career. Sorry, I had to shout him out, but I think it's got to be the Raiders. I mean, I think anybody else, I think there's too much risk underachieving for the other three teams for any of them to be overachievers. I agree, Braden. I think there's a school of thought that says the Broncos could underachieve, but what's your definition of that? Because I mean, if you say underachieving is the fact that they only win 10 games this year, well, they have the hardest schedule in the NFL. And are you really going to want to see us in the playoffs? I doubt it. And so, pundits might say a 10-7 season for the Broncos is a regression, but I still would be very confident in us going into the playoffs. And I just don't think I just don't believe in the Chargers. I don't. Unless they win a Super Bowl, I just don't know that I ever will. So yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think it's got to be the Raiders as the overachievers. Chargers, prove us wrong if you don't like people criticizing you. Yeah.
Yeah, I just as a closing comment on that, from me, we talked a lot about offense tonight, and I'm sure that our shows as we continue on will cover a lot more in depth with other things. But I think you talk about a team that's built to do the most, and it'd be hard pressed not to look at the home team. I think we're feeling great on a number of sides, pretty much all three sides, and so I think that every time has got to keep you in the conversation on that. So, and like I said, I know we'll talk about that as we get more into the season and such, but pretty exciting time.
For sure. Only more and more to talk about from here on out. Well, thank you everyone for joining us here tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe, share if you feel so inclined. But thank you for joining us here on the Broncos Zone podcast, part of the EPS network of podcasts. And we hope to see you soon. And as always, go Broncos.
Go Broncos.
Go Broncos.